Though this may be a Star Wars review, I want to dedicate this start for you Star Trek fans. I'm going to dedicate this video to the loving memory of Patty Yatsuke from Star Trek The Next Generation, who lost her battle with cancer at the age of 70. Well, I will do, this is going to be like a two-part review. I'm going to review this, and I did a rewatch of the Skywalker trilogy, the third trilogy, and I'll explain that in a bit. But what a breath of fresh air this was. It was almost perfect. Few minuses, but we'll get into it. But this is the sort of the cover to Darth Plagueis Episode 1. Episode 1, the Phantom Apprentice. I would assume Episode 3 would be The Force Strikes Back, maybe. Maybe Episode 2 would be The Canted Circle, who knows. It was fun to watch this. It was fun to get into the characterization of Tenebrae and Plagueis. You know, funny thing, when I went to the movie theaters back in 2012, I watched The Phantom Menace in 3D. So watching in 3D, and then I had my my book. So I had the Darth Plagueis novel by James Luceno. It had just come out a couple of months before, but I didn't know about it until late. And then later on that same year, I got the first appearance of Darth Plagueis, illustrated and Darth Tenebrae, in Star Wars Insider number 130. That was the magazine that introduced us to Plagueis in full before the book that James Luceno wrote. I think Matthew Stover wrote it. It's a little insert in the magazine. And so I read, I think I was on the chapter where Hiko Damask was going back to Munilis. So, yeah, I love that explosion right there. So everything kind of plays out the way I remembered. Of course, minus the plagiarism voices. But Star Wars Theory led it a voice. He was Darth Venomous. You know, that was a good time. But speaking of theory, you know, Catherine LaSalle would make a great Padme Naberry, but that won't be till later. But yeah, she could do it. Sure, why not? Yeah, I'm just being stupid. This part, I like this part because it reminded me of Ripley and the Alien movie. The first Alien movie where, you know, the alien's kind of hiding in the ship and everybody doesn't find out. Was this your inspiration, Lord Crit? Was Alien 1979 your inspiration for doing this scene? Because I could not keep track of which race all the aliens were. What I found interesting about Act 1 was that there were no humans until we got to Naboo, or until we heard from the representative of Naboo in the holocron, holocron, right? A holo transmission. So that's when we saw humans for the first time, but everybody else was a creature. Now, omitted is the series of disciples that Tenebrae have for obviously for time. I would have kind of liked to have seen a montage of him going and meeting the Jedi killing the one guy, the disciple guy, the one that had was like the cult leader, and the casino planet. That would have been cool as like a montage. Like, oh master, like 1140 would have said, how goes your journey? You know that Tenebrae has other people. Most likely, a calculation is 7,300,000 to 1 that he has other people. Oh yes, but they've been dealt with, right? So you would have seen like white, and then we would have just gone to Palpatine. That would have been kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, you have to omit though. You have to chop those down for time, because in all that time, in a book it's fine, but in a movie you have to get to Palpatine. But I kind of thought we got there too quickly. But that's why you're the big star. That's why you're the big YouTuber, because you know what you were doing. So yeah, 1140, I wasn't sure how he was going to look. I thought he would have multiple appendages already. I thought he was going to be green, but that was my my feeling about it. And that's I could tell you what these scenes were. Even, like in my head, I played them over and over and over when I read the book. I read that book like 5 to 10 times, and I could tell you what was happening. I knew what scene we were at. Because that's the best thing about reading books. As George Costanza says, I love to read, you know? That's pretty good. That's a pretty good, yeah. So you and Star Wars are best of friends. I wonder what you'll get to do for Episode 2 of Darth Vader. I'm sure you'll get to do a little bit. We'll see how, because his graphics, he showed off his graphics for Mace Windu and his apprentice, so they look pretty good. They look like PlayStation 5 graphics. We'll see how that turns out. A lot of work is involved. There was so many obstacles he had to go through from the first one to the second one. But anyway, going back to your project, yeah, they had to cut through all this stuff, but it would have been kind of nice to see a montage. But Venomous has to be used as experiments. But I'm wondering about what's going to happen later on with your prequel to this. I imagine the king to not look like a male version of the queen. I don't know why. I expected him to look like a greedy king with just regular peach skin. You know, in the original chronology, the King Ars Varuna died in mysterious circumstances, already established before this book came out. Years before this book came out, he just died. Now we know why he died. I will admit, it was difficult to get used to the Dooku voice, as George Lucas would say, Doku, like Sudoku. It was hard to get used to the Dooku-like voice. Because it came to the voice and characterization, this is the first guy that pops up in my head. Of course, maybe this guy too. But the way he carries himself anyway, I think it's very good. I mean, other than that nitpick, Plagueis, Higo Damas carries himself exactly the way he's supposed to. Like 90% of all the characters behave the way you expect them to when you're reading the book. So I think that the jump shouldn't be too much. I mean, it's as I expect it to be. I mean, you know, Palpatine rides the speeder the way you expect him to do it. Oh, this is where he looks for. Yeah, Tom Hiddleston was a good choice. At the time I was reading this, obviously it was 2012. So, you know, I didn't think of Tom Hiddleston because he had just barely like up and coming, right? But I thought of this guy here as Palpatine. Yes, I must turn to the dark side, you know what I mean? I must do it, I would have everything, you know. Yeah, this guy. Is she really going out with... Yeah, that guy. Anyway, this guy's good. It's kind of hard to kind of get into it because he does sound like an old man. But I think Ian McDiarmid always sounded like an old man, even when you go back to the 1970s theater he did, like the, what is it, Hamlet or one of the other Shakespearean plays. He always sounded weird and cranky and old. It's like, God, didn't he ever sound like a kid? Anyway. Yeah, once we get into Palpatine, between Palpatine and Plagueis, this exchange is all that matters. It's really like he's got to manipulate him. This is the Sith version. You know, it's more basic in structure in the way of Ben Kenobi and Luke Skywalker, but going in the direction as Revenge of the Sith. But in Revenge of the Sith, Anakin was trying to do good. Here, this guy is always doing bad. That's the one thing I do have one complaint, is that in the book, we learned that he's sort of a delinquent, mischievous, a delinquent, like a criminal record. Here we don't know this at all. We don't know that. I don't know if we should know that or not when we just look at this and not the book. But would have been cool to know. But he was always like a piece of garbage. I think one person pointed out when they read the book, they liked the fact that it wasn't moody Anakin, this moody kid that can't figure himself out. But at here, Palpatine is the same guy, but he's just not experienced, which was great. So here he's just trying to figure himself out. And the exchange between Kasinga and Sheev was great. I expect the mom and the family to be thrown around the cabin, but we always hear it. He only mentions it, so you can only go too far in the violence. You don't want to show it, just like when the children get slaughtered in the Jedi Temple. There you go. So yeah, this whole exchange is pretty good. Oh yeah, so this is when, and his eyes glowed a white glow. So I'm going to give a score for this one right now. I'm going to tell you what I think. What should I give it? Hold on. Because when doing this, let's see. I will give it. Yeah. I'll give it an A+. So A+, not a high A+. There were still some things I would, just looking at it, I can't wait to see and seeing how this bad boy is going to turn out. It's got to take place before the events of the Plagueis novel. So, yeah, I have a funny feeling, just my theory, not theory's theory, not Star Wars theory's theory, that Abeloth and the witches will be the power of many. Somehow Abeloth has to factor in, because then it would make everything you've done before would make sense. Because if you don't have Abeloth's presence where those witches are, as the acolyte is happening, then don't even do this. There's no way Lord Crit is working on this project if Abeloth is not somehow in this thing. I know Abeloth is within, breaks the restraining order and gets right over there with the witches, right? Because, you think, I mean, it would have made sense that Plagueis had shown up anyway to take whatever he could and keep it for himself, even if he had to decipher it. But he just shows up in a creepy cave, doesn't he? Anyway, so let's go on to my experience with the trilogy. Now, one of the first things I did was I looked back at Revitalized. And what I actually did was, because it was incomplete, I went back to look at the first 4 chapters. But the first 4 chapters never had an ending. And this is the final chapter. I think this is the motion comic, the Last Command motion comic, chapter 27 to... So this is a motion comic that deals with the final confrontation with Thrawn. And I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Lord Crit, would it not be, instead of the crazy Jedi clone, would it not be Moff Gideon who would lose against Luke Skywalker and Mara Jade? Like, they would finally confront him, and then Luke would give Mara Jade his lightsaber, and Mara Jade gives it to Maz Kanata, and that's how she gives it to Rey. Which would make sense, would explain this perfectly. Because it's passing that lightsaber to other people, So, this, if I watched the first 4 chapters and then I watched this, right, I would give the experience, I'll give it a B+. I think that it would be justified. So yeah, Mara Jade and Luke Skywalker versus Moff Gideon. But the same thing that happened to Thrawn in the Legends would still happen. Because it's amazing, right? Somebody said, shouldn't Thrawn have died in a more defiant battle of wits and stuff? Well, Moff Gideon does, right? You could see Moff Gideon die on the hill fighting with his Darksaber, right? But Thrawn's different. He's more of a strategist. He's about war and battle. But the thing is, much like when Vader chose his son over the Sith, the lizard people, the big giant lizard people that were mistreated by the Empire, the assassin chose his own people and compassion for his people, knowing that the Empire betrayed them, so he stabbed him through the fucking chair. So I think that should always stay that way, because Thrawn he underestimated the enemy, and that was just his own stupidity. Like, he could fight back, but that's just not what happens. So I give it a B+, only because you didn't complete the story. It was incomplete with just those 4 chapters. But, I could watch this ending here and be satisfied with how it was supposed to go. Because Han and Leia and Luke, they would do the same things that they did before, even with Moff Gideon, even with, I forgot her name, Satine's sister, right? Duchess Satine's sister. And then, with Hera, Chopper, and all that stuff. But with The Force Awakens, since there is no revitalized version, can I still watch this? Yes, I can still. You can still watch it and enjoy it. I still don't really favor this movie, and I would rather watch the first 6 movies. But I'll tell you what. Watching the revitalized chapters with Luke and Mara Jade, and then getting to The Force Awakens, knowing what was going to happen in the next 2 movies that you revitalized, I felt better about it. I guess it'd be mindful of the present, but not of the future. But I don't care. I want to know how it goes. Because when you're not mindful of the future, you let Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams try to figure it out. That's what happens. So I will give The Force Awakens a C+, a well generous C+, just because it is the original movie, and I like BB-8. I think that Star Wars girl hated BB-8, but that's her thing. That was, I don't hate everything JJ made, but it's like this was not an original plot. But seeing what's going to happen to Rey, what's going to happen to Finn, well, we'll get to Rise of Skywalker in a moment. I've raised these complaints before. Now looking at the Last Jedi, I really really enjoyed. This is the director's cut. I didn't see the previous version, but this was really good. I don't know what the differences were, but I'm sure that it's better for it. Um, I have very little complaints. The only thing you could say is that the technical issues were there. There was some jittering and epileptic seizures that the characters would have. But one day when you have more money, when you become a bigger YouTuber or you become more famous, you can get like PlayStation 4 software and make like have lips sync with the characters. Their lips move and all that stuff. One day you'll get into that. Because we're gonna see special editions of these movies, right? It's like the special editions with real flowing hair and all that. But you're more known for the talking scene, so the action comes more in the last one. But I really enjoyed it. No Rose Tico. Rose Tico meets her fate. Haldo's in the Coruscant kitchen where she belongs, and seeing what happened with Akbar was great. So it flowed from the first one pretty well. It really did. Um, just trying to remember. I couldn't even remember what Luke did. I know Luke tossed the lightsaber over his shoulder, but I forgot what he did instead. But it was just a very simple scene. If you how look back at Superman 2 by Richard Lester, how they had the whole Superman mirrors thing, and then how he threw the Superman shield on the Phantom Zone criminals, and then you look at the Donner cut, and Superman just walks out from a hiding place, and he just confronts them. It's just so simple. Like, you don't need to do too many things, but they did too many things. It's very interesting. So, what will I give the last? I love the last few minutes where Luke tells Rey she wasn't abandoned, she was saved, and the last scene was so good. So, I will give it. I'm gonna give it. Shit, I'll give it an A plus. Yeah, I'll give it an A plus for The Last Jedi. And let's go down to the culprit here. Now, everything works. Everything works up until the last scenes because everything was great. Finn finds his lights. He finds his place as a Jedi, more of a Jedi guard than anything because he picks up the yellow lightsaber. He's more of the guard. Everybody has their place. Everybody has their position. I like when the Imperials kill Hux, and the guy that's now in command just looks at the new Mothma. I forgot her name, Mothma, right? And just walks away like something should happen, but he doesn't do anything. He figures, well, she's going to suffer anyway, so I'll leave her be. And there were some other nice scenes. Phasma will probably. If Phasma falls to her death, maybe she just won't have her legs. Maybe she just loses her legs. Her legs go through her spine and all sorts, She'll become a cripple, and then she'll be like Saw Gerrera. She just won't have her legs anymore. I don't know. I think that it would have been nice for Finn to point out for a competent, strong soldier. You sure are stupid. You waste all your time trying to chase me when you have way more competent soldiers. Like, what is that all about? Like, why waste your time on me? But, yeah, that didn't need to be pointed out, I guess. Poe Dameron. So here's what I would have done. And I think a lot of people might agree with me on this. At the very end of this, we should have seen Finn start to train new Jedi guards, like the ones we saw in the Clone Wars, right? The Clone Wars where they protect the Jedi Council. And we should have seen Poe's funeral. We should have seen where does Kylo Ren. My feeling is Kylo Ren restarts the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. But here's the funny. I had a funny thought. What if Rey starts her own Jedi Council, but she buys out the bar that Luke and Luke and Ben Kenobi went to go see Han Solo and Chewie. That bar, the cantina. What if she bought the whole cantina and had all the Jedi just sit on those bar stools around, and she would just sit as the bartender and talk Jedi business, her own Jedi council in the cantina on Tatooine. Like, that would be highly unusual, but that would be kind of funny because it's like the irony of it all. Like, you don't think of Jedi council when you think of that cantina. Like, they just move the new they move to somewhere else, and she just buys it out. And then, like, as she's talking to her son, she talks about this and that, but we see a wipe, just like in episode 6. We see what's happened to everybody, where's everybody going, and then we just go to Luke and I don't know, Luke and Leia, but it's Luke and us watching everything from afar. Um, I don't know. I don't know if you gave the son a name. The son who is the father of Nat, who was the brother of Cole. If you have any ideas for Revitalize in the near future, you know, I mean, yeah, obviously her, right? But this person too, let me know. Maybe I could do Kate Skywalker, maybe not. Kate Skywalker's cool. Kate is cool. They kind of do the same thing where they essentially just fight on Coruscant, but oh, bad, the Emperor had to get struck down. That was a hard one. It's like, oh, my Emperor, on Terrace Draco says, oh, my Emperor, what have I done? I gotta do this. So, yeah, they had to strike him down. Oh my God. The politics was even more complex. Imperial Jedi Knights, such a thing. Let me know what your favorite moments in Legacy was between Cade and Ania Solo. Oh, and 1974 Star Wars. Shit. I think I covered that whole thing on my channel. What a time that was. Anyway, so A's all around mostly. The only C I gave was for The Force Awakens, but that had nothing to do with Lord Crit. And I think a B for the unfinished 4 chapters. I don't know if it was going to be 6 or 7 or 8 chapters long. Because George Lucas said he wanted to do it right after Return. The only thing that you didn't cover that George Lucas said he wanted to do in 7, 8, and 9, or he wanted to do episodes after 6, but he focused on the Ewoks and the Saturday morning cartoons. But the one thing he wanted to do was he wanted to explain midichlorians. I think the truth is midichlorians don't define a person. They can tell you how powerful a person is and how aggressive they can be, like a mood ring, but they can't define a person. Only the people around them. That's their universe. Anyway, see you all soon.